We're going to start with a review of the heart before we go into ECGs and EKGs. So let's just get started. Remember, blood is coming from the top of the head or the top of the body through our superior vena cava and from the bottom part of our body through the inferior vena cava, and it's landing here in this right atrium. At the exact same time, we've got blood gathering back from the lungs into the left atrium. Now, we say the heart is a double pump because what we're doing is we're going to be pumping blood to the pulmonary system to pick up oxygen and get rid of the carbon dioxide, and we're also going to be putting blood out to the system or the systemic system out to the body to drop off oxygen, glucose, whatever it is, and also pick up cell waste and carbon dioxide. So this is called a double pump system. So our blood's coming in here, it's gathered in here. Now we have these special little cells here at the top of the atrium. This is called the SA node. So we're going to just put a little note about them up here. So the SA node this is called the sinoatrial node. These are those pacemaker cells. They're a specialized group of cells. They're the ones that set the pace for the heart rate. Now they get a signal from the brain that says, all right, we're exercising, we need you to pump faster, or we're calmed down now, we need you to pump slower. But they basically are the ones that are going to be telling the rest of the heart when it's time to beat. So they set the rhythm and the rate of the heartbeat. All right? And usually normal sinus rhythm is going to be between 60 to 100 beats per minute. That's just like your normal heart rate. All right? If you're exercising or you're fever or you're stressed, it may go up over 100. So what's going to happen here is these guys, the sinoatrial node, is going to send a signal, right? Once this is full, right, it's going to send a signal across both atriums. So this SA node is going to fire, because this is an electrical impulse, it's going to fire all the way across this side and also over to this side. Right, and cause the muscles in the atria to contract. So both sides are going to contract at exactly the same time and squeeze all that blood down into the ventricles. So that's going to happen. We're going to get a signal. The pacemaker cells are going to say, all right, we're full, we're ready to go, we need to pump some blood. Squeeze, so both sides squeeze, and the blood pumps down here into the ventricles. Now, we've got blood down here in the ventricles now that came up from here. All right, so now this is going to be filled with blood. I know the blood's not really blue, but we'll just show the deoxygenated blood in blue and then the oxygenated blood in red. So we've got the blood all down here. Now, we've got another node that's down here. This is the AV node. So we've got our AV node. Now our AV node, this is the atrioventricular node. And this is going to act as a gatekeeper. So it acts as a gatekeeper because, well, let me just write this down before I keep talking. Because what you want is, you want to make sure that all the blood from the atria are down in the ventricles before the ventricles contract. So this is going to get the signal. The signal is going to be traveling through the atria. This guy's going to get the electrical signal from the contraction of the atria, but it's going to determine when it's time for the ventricles to contract, because you don't want the ventricles to contract before they're full of blood. That would just be a waste of time, because if it's not full, you're not going to be pumping all the blood out. So this AV node is going to act as the gatekeeper. It's going to get the electrical signal and it's going to hang on to it and pass it on when the ventricles are absolutely full. So it temporarily stops the impulse. So the electrical impulse from the atria. Okay, so it temporarily stops the impulse until the atria, so both sides, are empty. All right, because we don't want the ventricles to be contracting at the same time as the atria. We don't want the ventricles to contract, sorry about this terrible messy writing, at the same time as the atria. That would be totally inefficient if that happened. Alrighty, so now what happens is these guys have contracted. All the blood has been pushed down here to the ventricles. This guy has received the signal saying, all right, we've contracted. This guy says, all right, you know what? All the blood's in here. It's time for the ventricles to contract. So this guy will spread the information all across here. Now, remember the ventricles, they're big. They're pretty thick-walled, especially the left side. It's really, really fat muscle in there. So what we have to help things along here is we've got this bundle of His. So we've got two electrical bundles that run along the outside of the ventricles, and these are called the Purkinje fibers. So we've got left and right bundles, they're bundle branches or bundle fibers, and what they do is they're going to make sure that the electrical signal from this AV node is spread equally across the whole entire ventricle, so that you have the whole ventricle pushing at one time, not like one part pushing a little bit harder than the other part. So we're going to make sure that everything pushes at exactly the same pace and the same strength. Now sometimes you can have a heart block in the bundle, so a bundle branch block, all right, and that will cause you to have some heart issues. So sometimes some heart issues are called a bundle branch block, and you can have primary, secondary, tertiary, and that's because there's a blockage somewhere in this electrical signal. So obviously you're not going to have a really good strong push out of the blood from the ventricles. All right, so this is going to squeeze. The impulse is going to get sent along. It's going to squeeze. The AV node is going to get the signal. It's going to look down and say, all right, we're full of blood. Everybody here squeeze. And then we're going to have the blood squeezing up and out of the right ventricle over to the lungs. All right, so we're going out to lungs on both sides. And the blood that's coming from the left ventricle is going to go up. It's going to go out. It's going to go up to the head. It's going to go through the body, whatever, out through that aorta. All right, so you might have missed that because I had this paper up a little bit higher. So the blood from here is going to go up and out the left ventricle. It's going to go up and out through the aorta to the head, to the arms, to the legs, all the way down through that aorta down, splits down into the legs. The blood from this side is going to go up. It's going to go out to the lungs and pick up some oxygen and drop off some carbon dioxide. Right? Now, keep in mind too, we've got these little valves in here. So our first thing that happens is we're going to have those valves that are going to snap shut. So once the blood flows through both these sides into the ventricles, these valves are going to snap shut because you don't want that blood coming backwards. So they're open while the blood is flowing through, and then they're going to snap shut to try to prevent the blood from going backwards. Right? That's their job. So when you hear that first lub sound, that first bang, that S1, the first heart sound, which is called S1, when you hear that first lub, that's the sound of this valve closing and this valve closing at the same time. So they've squeezed, the valves have closed, that's your lub, your first heart sound. And then what happens is once these parts have squeezed all the blood out and the blood has gone out, we want these valves, the pulmonary valve and the aortic valve, we want these two valves to shut, right? Because we don't want the blood to flow backwards and back into the ventricles. And that is your dub sound or your S2 sound. So you've got your lub sound is when your tricuspid and your mitral valve close, and your pulmonary and your aortic valves, when they close, that's called the dub sound or the S2 sound. So you're going to have a little video to watch on that to find out what's happening in there. But I'm just going to say anyway, I'll just say it right now. So between your first heart sound, so between the lub and the dub is when you have systole, which is when the blood travels through the... Actually, you know what? I'll just write this down. So when your your tricuspid valve and your mitral valve close, this is called the lub, all right, which is also called your S1 heart sound. And when your pulmonary valve and your aortic valve close, this is called your dub sound, which is your S2 sound. And in between these two sounds, what's happening, this kind of all works together. We're talking about electrical impulses, we're talking about blood pumping out, and we're also talking about blood pressure here. So what's happening here is between S1 to S2, so in between your tricuspid and your mitral valve closing and the pulmonary and aortic valve closing, we've got systole. So keep this in mind for when we get to blood pressure. So this is when your blood, I'm just going to short form blood as BLD, to the body or the head. All right, so the body and the head. So this is when the blood is being pushed out to the body and the head. And between S2 and S1, so between those second valves closing and then going back to the first set of valves closing, this is when you have the blood, short form, whatever, going to the ventricles. Okay, and we call that diastole. Alrighty. So that's it for our heart diagram here. Again, if this is confusing to you, there's tons and tons of videos on the internet that you can watch as well on YouTube. So just take a peek if you're not too sure. So the next video, what we're going to do is we're going to use some of this information to talk about how we end up forming an ECG. So see you in a little bit.